Hi, this is Hermilia B. Gratuito. Our lesson for today is the verb to have. The verb to have is an unusual verb since it functions in various ways, which can be confusing. These are the forms of verb to have. For the subject I, you, we, they, we can use the form have in the present tense, had in the past tense, having in the continuous tense. In the subject he, she, it, we can use the form has in the present tense, had in the past tense, having in the continuous tense. Let us have an example. I have glasses. She has a tricycle. It has a lot of fruit on top of it. He had an idea. Let us take up the uses of verb to have. The first usage is the verb to have as a main verb. This is used for position, ownership, accusation, ability, or for a description. We can further break it down into 1.1. Have as a main verb in the simple present. So it would take the form have, has, in the negative, don't have, doesn't have. So these are the examples. Pronouns I, we, you, they. We have an example in the affirmative sentence. I have a new guitar. In the negative sentence, I don't have a new guitar. In the question form, do I have a new guitar? The pronouns he, she, it has an example in the affirmative sentence. She has a new guitar. In the negative sentence, she doesn't have a new guitar. In the question form, does she have a new guitar? I have, you have, she has, he has. Notice that the third party singular takes the form has. We have, they have, it has. These are all in the present tense. So we have an example. I have a car. He has a car. They have a car. I takes the form of have. He takes the form of has. And they takes the form of have. 1.2. Have as a main verb in the simple past. It would take the form had, or in the negative, didn't have. I, he, she, it, we, you, and they will have an example in the affirmative sentence. I had a new guitar. In the negative sentence, I did not have a new guitar. In the question form, did I have a new guitar? I had, you had, she had, he had, we had, they had, it had. If you can notice, all nouns and pronouns take had in the past tense. I had a pet. He had a pet. They had a pet. All of these examples has the form had in all of the subjects. 1.3. The negative forms of the main verb to have. The first column, we have the present. For the first, second person singular, I, you, We have in the present do not have or don't have. In the third person singular, he, she, etc., in the present tense, it would take the form does not have or doesn't have. For the plural we, you, they, in the present tense, it would take the form don't have. And all of these in the past tense will have the form did not have or didn't have. In the present perfect tense, it would take the form haven't had for the first and second person singular, hasn't had for the third person singular, and haven't had in the plural form. For the past perfect tense, it would take all of these subject would take the form hadn't have for the negative form of the main verb to have. So let us have an example. We haven't had any complaints so far. If he hadn't had those mushrooms, he wouldn't be ill. 1.4. These are now in the present progressive tense. I am having, you are having, she is having, he is having, we are having, they are having, it is having. If we can notice, the verb takes the pattern of verb to be plus have plus ing form of the verb. She is having a baby. In this example, you have the verb to be is plus the verb to have plus ing form, having. They are having babies. The verb to be are and the ing form of the verb having. It is having babies. Verb to be is plus the ing form of the verb have. If have is used as a transitive verb, it must therefore be followed by a direct object. The direct object of to have can be a noun group, a pronoun, or a numeral. Let us have an example. The doctor had a lot of experience. So it shows position. A lot of experience is the direct object of the verb had in this sentence. A lot of experience is a noun group. The house has 8 windows and 3 doors. This shows ownership. The verb has takes the direct object 8 windows and 3 doors. Again, this is a noun group. The second usage of the verb to have, it is used as an auxiliary. The verb have is used as an auxiliary to form the present perfect and past perfect forms of other verbs. 2.1. Have as an auxiliary in the present perfect. Pronouns I, we, you, and they will have an example in the affirmative sentence. I have seen Peter. In the negative sentence, I haven't seen Peter. In the question form, have I seen Peter? The pronouns of the third person singular he, she, it will have an example in the affirmative sentence. She has seen Peter. In the negative sentence, she hasn't seen Peter. And in the question form, has she seen Peter? 2.2. Have as an auxiliary in the past perfect. Again, if we use the past participle. For the pronouns I, he, she, it, we, you, and they, it would take the form had. So, the example for the affirmative sentence, I had seen Peter. In the negative sentences, I hadn't seen Peter. In the question form, had I seen Peter? 2.3. Have as an auxiliary in the future perfect. All of the pronouns I, he, she, it, we, you, and they will have an example in the affirmative sentence. They will have spoken to Peter. The negative sentence, they won't have spoken to Peter. In the question form, will they have spoken to Peter? 2.4. Contracted forms of the auxiliary verb have. As an auxiliary, have, has, and had are frequently contracted to the forms apostrophe ve, apostrophe s, and apostrophe d after pronouns. Let us have an example so that we can read it properly. I've had a good day. I've is a contraction of the words I and have. The Prime Minister's appointed a new team. There is a contraction plus S in the word ministers. 3. The third uses of the verb to have. It could be used as an auxiliary and at the same time as a main verb. 3.1. Have as an auxiliary and a main verb in the present perfect. It would take the form had. Pronouns I, we, you, and they will have an example in the affirmative sentence. They have had a nice time. Negative sentence. They haven't had a nice time. In the question form, have they had a nice time? If you notice, have and had are not consecutively written in the question form. He, she, it has an example in the affirmative sentence. He has had a nice time. Negative sentence. He hasn't had a nice time. In the question form again, these are not written consecutively. Has he had a nice time? I have had. You have had. She has had. He has had. We have had. They have had. It has had. This is in the present perfect tense. Notice that the use of the verb to have is twice. Although this may confuse you, you should realize that the first time the verb to have is used is an auxiliary. And the second time that the verb to have is used, it would take the actual verb meaning to own. So, let us have an example again. I've had 3 phone calls so far today. There is a contraction of the words I and have. It is written consecutively I've and had because this is in the present perfect tense. Have is first, had is the second verb to have. Before getting into his car, he'd had 6 glasses of whiskey. So again, there is a contraction of he and had, and then another had as the actual verb. 3.2. Have as an auxiliary and a main verb in the past perfect. Remember, it would use had. Pronouns I, he, she, it, we, you, they. We have an example in the affirmative sentence. They had had a nice time. In the negative sentence, they hadn't had a nice time. In the question form, had they had a nice time? For sure they had. The fourth usage of the verb have is it is used as modal verbs of obligation. And it would take the forms must, have to, should, ought to. The types of modal verbs of obligation, 4.1, it primarily expresses a firm obligation or etc. So we have the form must and have to. The verb must only exists in the simple present and present perfect forms. Present form can express obligation, necessity, certainty, or strong probability. Present perfect forms only express a strong felt opinion or supposition. In all person of the subject, we have affirmative. In the present tense, we use must. In the affirmative, present perfect, must have. In the negative, present, we use must not or mustn't. And in the present perfect, we use must not have, mustn't have. Okay, example, you must see a doctor at once. If other tenses are required, the speaker or writer must use forms of the synonymous modal verb have to. Principal tenses, we have affirmative, negative, and progressive or continuous. In the present tense, affirmative has to, have to. Present perfect affirmative has had to, have had to. In the past, we have affirmative had to, and in the future, affirmative will have to. Present negative, it would take does not have to, do not have to, doesn't have to, don't have to. Present perfect negative, has not had to, have not had to. Past negative, did not have to, didn't have to. Future negative, will not have to, won't have to. Present progressive or continuous tenses, am having to, is having to, are having to. Present perfect progressive or continuous, has been having to, have been having to. Past progressive or continuous, was having to, were having to. Future progressive or continuous, will be having to. I have to pass the exam, so I will have to work harder. Other tenses can be formed, including tenses with modal auxiliaries. I will have walked 10 miles today. I could have been walking instead of playing soccer. They must have been walking for 10 hours. 4.3 have or have got. Both mean the same. We use have got in spoken English. We use have in your formal written English. Like for example, if you will be writing a business correspondence or etc., we use the formal have. Have got only exists in the present simple tense. Don't use it in the continuous past or future tenses. For example, how many brothers have you got? You can say formally, how many brothers do you have? But remember, both of these sentences are correct. 4.2 Recommendation or moral obligation. Should and ought to. Should and ought to are more or less synonymous. Example, you should stop smoking. This is also the same as you ought to stop smoking. It's raining hard. The children ought to come indoors. 4.2.1. The verb should only exist in the simple present and present perfect forms. Forms of should. All persons, present affirmative, should, present perfect affirmative, should have. Present negative, should not or shouldn't. Present perfect negative, should not have, shouldn't have. If you'd wanted to succeed, you should have worked harder at school. 4.2.2, the verb ought to only exists in simple present and present perfect forms. Forms of ought to. Present affirmative, ought to. Present perfect affirmative, ought to have. Present negative, ought not to, ought to. Present perfect negative, ought not to have, ought to have. That's awful. You really ought to have done that, you know. I didn't know you were married. You ought to have told me. Okay, let us practice what we have learned. Fill in the blank with have, has, doesn't have, or don't have. Number 1, he blanked a very good job. Number 2, she blanked a car. It should take the negative form of the verb to have. 3, again in the negative form, I blanked much time today. 4th, the students blanked their books. 5, the cat blanked enough food. 6, my car blanked any gas. We should take the negative form. 7th, you blank a lot of work to do. 8, we blank any milk. Again, let us use the negative form. 9, the government blanked thousands of employees. 10th, Maria blanked a new computer. Put these words into the correct order to make sentences with the verb to have. The first set of words, have, clean, after, shower, period, bathroom, the, well, you, a. Second set, have, wants, children, says, that, 3, she, period, Margaret, 2. The third set, have, I'm, problem, boss, because, I, a, big, not, with, period, happy, my. The fourth set, have, house, to, we, fun, when, party, period, always, we, go, at, jams. The fifth set, have, can, breakfast, the, I, period, in, room, see, because, I, dining, garden. Sixth, has, headache, my, a, loud, the, mother, period, bad, because, of, music. Seventh set, have, go, do, a, nice, question mark, cinema, you, when, you, the, time, to. 8. Have, dreams, when, very, I, eat, period, food, spicy, strange, I. Ninth, had, started, when, the, period, much, we, arrived, already. 10th, has, his, Dave, period, driving, past, test. Okay, have you done your answers or are you done with your answers? Now let us evaluate your answers. In the first set, fill in the blank with have, has, doesn't have, or don't have. We have these. Number 1, he has a very good job. Number 2, doesn't have. She doesn't have a car. This is in the negative form. Number 3, don't have. I don't have much time today. Again, this is in the negative form. Fourth, the students have their books. Have. Fifth, the cat has enough food. The correct answer is has. 6. My car doesn't have any gas. This is in the negative, doesn't have. 7th, you have a lot of work to do. The correct answer is have. 8. We don't have any milk. Don't have in the negative form. 9. The government has thousands of employees. The correct answer is has. 10th, Maria has a new computer. The correct answer is has. In the second set, put these words into the correct order to make sentences with the verb to have. This is the first sentence. Clean the bathroom well after you have a shower. Second sentence. Margaret says that she wants to have 3 children. Third, I'm not happy because I have a big problem with my boss. Fourth, we always have fun when we go to a party at John's house. Fifth, I have breakfast in the dining room because I can see the garden. 6. My mother has a bad headache because of the loud music. 7. Do you have a nice time when you go to the cinema? 8. I have very strange dreams when I eat spicy food. 9. The match had already started when we arrived. And the last number is Dave has passed his driving test. Again, this is Hermelia B. Gratuito. Thank you for having my lessons today. See you